Hello there, this is Paul Green, and I want to welcome you to my D2 presentation of Violence, Awareness, and Avoidance Training for Everyone. This is a video audio version of a text article that I did on my Steemit blog, PSG3196, a few days ago. I think it's been less than a week because it's still active. I did it as a two-part article. Um, so if you would, like to read that, you can go over there and read it. Um, this I decided to do this because people, since it had audio, you could listen to it in the background while you worked on other things, and you didn't have to stop and come up with time, to read all through it because sometimes it's a lot of information. And with a video, I could do this, in one sitting, and hopefully, would not take as long. So I want to start by covering the basics. The reason that I wanted to do this is because I've seen a lot of self defense, stuff on the internet, and it just seemed like the people were trying to scare you. They're trying to scare people into their classes or scare somebody into buying their product, and it just had like a real negative view of everything, as if you couldn't do anything. And that's just not true. Um, a lot of times people that are in this kind of industry, and make no mistake, it is an industry. Um, People tend to kind of live in a bubble. And when you are constantly around violence and violent things, you tend to kind of start to think that way. And sometimes you forget what it's like, for other people. And so I wanted to get something that was attainable, that wasn't overwhelming, that people could reasonably use to help themselves. And so I put this little thing together based on information from various sources over the years, and hopefully, it'll help you out. I want to start with what they call today the triangle of violence. Back the first time I was introduced to it was about 20 years ago on a website called No Nonsense Self Defense.com, which is the website, or was the website, for author Mark Animal McYoung, who wrote a lot of books, back in the 80s. And as far as I know, he's still a prolific writer. I know he posts on Facebook a lot. But if that site's still up, no nonsense self-defense.com, it has a wealth of information. Please go check it out. But this is something that I put together like in a kind of a short package for everybody. So means, opportunity, and intent. Sometimes instead of means, they say ability. I have seen other sources where intent, depending upon what you're talking about, they may call it jeopardy, but it all means the same thing. For a violent attack to occur, all of these three things have to be there. These things can't happen to you unless these three things line up. And throughout your daily routine, you may or may not end up in a situation where these things do in fact line up. And it's just that when they do line up, just try to be a little bit more aware, pay a little bit more attention. And that's really not unreasonable. You have ability. Let's say you have opportunity and you have intent, but the person doesn't have the ability. Let's say it's a 4-year-old kid and he's angry at you. He doesn't really have the ability to do anything. So it's not going to make sense to, lay the smack down on him or something. Maybe take away his, Game Boy or whatever it is that they have now, and do that. It's not a big deal. It could also be somebody, waving a knife was an example that I saw, and talking about opportunity, but they're 50 feet away. Well, that's way out of reach. So, you know, they don't really have the opportunity to do it. And then you look at like intent or jeopardy. The best example I seen was on a website that, they gave. Let's see, the website was Active Response Training. I can't remember if it was .net or .com, but by the time you see this, it would have been yesterday. And I posted a D like link to it on my blog. So if you want to read that, go check it out. I think it has a video of some incident as well. But let's say you have a police officer, who's got a gun and they're walking past you. Well, they have the ability to shoot you. They have the opportunity to shoot you, but they're generally not going to. They're just walking past, doing their job. So, these three things have to line up. Um, and just because these three things do line up doesn't mean that you're going to be attacked. It just means that you need to be conscious of it and be more aware. I see a lot of this, kind of stuff on college campuses where, a lot of girls have a tendency to binge drink. A lot of guys too. When you say, hey, you really shouldn't do that, and then, they get angry and they're like, well, I should be able to do things, and all this. Yeah, you should, but, just be smarter about them. If you're going to do that, we're going to be drinking a lot. Safety in numbers. Stay with some people that are with you that are not drinking that can look out for you that you trust. Because when you're at a lot of these parties, means, opportunity, and intent do in fact line up. Um, so it's just about being awareness. If you sit down and you think about this, even subconsciously, you'll find yourself becoming more aware when you go out. And it doesn't mean that you have to live your life and be paranoid all the time. You can do things. You can have a normal, life. Um, so that's what that is in reference to. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that kind of fleshes this out a little bit more, and that's the questions: who, what, how, where, when, and why. And this is something I think is an invaluable tool. I got this idea from a mentor of mine, a self-defense combatives, teacher named W. Hawk Hockham, who travels and teaches at different seminars and various, martial arts things, and he's really good. And this is something that I learned from him, and I really kind of latched onto it because I feel that it's something that everybody can do. You can sit down with your family around, a kitchen table and talk about this stuff and have contingency plans and strategize around it, and do things proactively. And that's the real secret because a lot of these violent situations that you may find yourself in, or that's possible for you to find yourself in, 99.9% of them can be avoided if you just, apply these things and you become more aware because criminals have a tendency to profile their victims. It's easier to attack somebody that's on their cell phone and not paying attention and things like that than it is somebody that's looking dead at you and is going to put up a fight. They tend to go for more low hanging fruit. So it's going to be situational and it's going to fit your life, but it's something that you can be proactive about and start thinking about now, of course, without overdoing it, and being paranoid in some way. The first thing what you want to do is think about in your daily life, how many places do you go, during the day? If you think about it, it's not really that many. A lot of times, you think about protecting yourself in all these places and it seems overwhelming, but if you really think about it, it's not. You take each one of the places that you go and use it as an exercise to, kind of almost fishbone it and diagram it out as far as asking these questions: who, what, how, where, when, and why for each one of those places. And you'll find that you'll learn a lot. You'll think about things that you weren't thinking about before. Pardon me, just a moment. Alrighty, I am back. Sorry about that. But let's, use the example, the same one that I used in the blog. Let's use the grocery store because that's a common place that everyone has to go. Okay, so what? So who? This could range from many different situations. It could be a stranger wanting to commit a robbery. It could be an ex spouse, for example, if you were in a bad divorce or child custody situation. And those are really bad because they can know your route. It could be somebody at work for whom you got issues. It it's something that's not said. It can constantly change. So what's true one week, may not be true the next week. It's something. It's definitely something to think about. If you got somebody in your family that's having an issue with somebody, well, where does your family member go to normally? Um, excuse me. Have them ask these questions. And be more aware in situations where you think that would apply. The second question is who. This could be many different situations. It could be a stranger wanting to commit a robbery once again. Oh, excuse me. I'm looking at my notes and reading the same thing over again there. The next question is what. In case of a robbery, generally, if the person committing the robbery is alone, they will have some kind of a weapon. This could be a knife, a gun, or other such weapon. Strong arm robberies, which are robberies, that most of the time those happen in packs, and that's where they don't have a weapon, but they're using their bare hands, but it's a multiple attacker situation. So it, in fact, will definitely meet, that ability, portion of that pyramid there. Whereas if it's some guy, you think you could whoop, then maybe not. But it'll meet that threshold. But so it could start with bare hands. It could transition to weapons, and that type of a thing. A lot of times, if it's a personal situation, robbery may not be the motive. They could just be somebody just wants to beat you up. So that could be the what. The now. I'm actually paying attention to where I'm checking my notes on. Um, how will be more like once again if the person knows you and there's like some kind of an emotional attachment. Sorry about that. I keep getting interrupted. And there's some kind of emotional attachment. Those tend to be more violent. You see like your worst things, and once again, I mentioned before, child custody cases and things of that nature. Um, where could be the biggest one for me, and that's where we would use our grocery store idea. I think in the blog I used the example. You're not really likely to see a ninja jump out of a fruit bowl in the produce section, which is true. What you're going to find is that they're going to be in something that we're about to talk about, which is fringe areas. More than likely walking back and forth to your car. Um, you see a lot of people, get robbed or assaulted, going to the car, talking on their cell phone, fiddling with their keys, and that type of a thing, or putting the groceries in the trunk and not looking around, and that type of a thing. These are the places where your awareness needs to be, at its highest. Um, look for things like people loitering that aren't shopping there, that they don't have any real reason to be there. Stuff like that. You need to be conscious of those types of things. Once again, don't be paranoid, and don't get tense about it where you're afraid to leave your house or something, but just pay a little bit more attention to it. Um, well, I would go a little bit more into it, but we're going to talk about transitional and fringe areas here in just a second. The next one would be when. And I know in my town, we have a super Walmart that's open, 24 hours a day. And a lot of times people work at night shift jobs. They'll get off work and they'll go to the grocery store right then because, that's when the least people are there and they think they won't have to wait in line. And a lot of times it's more convenient for them. But that's also, you know, kind of the worst time, as far as crime. It's not that people don't get, attacked in broad daylight. They do. But generally, if somebody's going to commit a crime, they don't want a whole bunch of people watching them do it. So it tends to be, more dimly lit areas and that type of thing. So nighttime, is when it's most likely to happen, but it could happen in other times. And why is really more connected to who, and that's going to vary. Um, so those, are the questions you ask. about everywhere that you go. And sometimes you'll go places and it's not really going to apply, and that's good. But there are just some places that you need to be more aware than others. Not terrified, but just reasonably aware. The next thing that we're going to talk about is fringe areas, and those that kind of goes and ties back to the where, because that's where it generally happens. Um, Once again, it's going to be areas that are, once again, as it applies, transitional areas, usually small, kind of closed in areas. I used to live in an apartment where they had a laundry room for people that didn't have a washer and dryer, in their apartment. And you'd have people in there, late at night doing laundry. Maybe once again, they just got off work and, doing it while they're winding down and not quite tired yet. And that type of a thing. And, and then they're in there. Parking lots is an example that we already gave. Another one is ATMs. You're sitting there watching ATM's a perfect place, if it's going to be a robbery to get jumped because they know you're looking at the screen. They know you're about to get money. So, these are some examples of some fringe areas that, you can look out for. And the last one, that I'm going to talk about, sometimes, if you're doing more research, you'll see this as IMOP, intent, means, opportunity, and preclusion. Now, when I talk about preclusion here, I'm not talking about what the court part where you were. It's called res judicata or res judicata. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it, but where like a case ends and you're not allowed to appeal it and that kind of thing. It's over with. This is what I'm talking about. Is when if you have to use of force. Normally, you see it in gun cases where somebody was a concealed and carry holder, and something happened and they ended up shooting the person. And that's where you really see this come play. It can come into play in other things, but you see it, a lot, during that type of a situation. And it's, can you ask the questions? Is there anything else that you could have done other than shoot this person? Could you have ran? Could you have gotten away long enough to call police? Could you have went somewhere and hid? Could you have found cover? And those things are going to come up in court because anything that you do, you have to answer for it. Um, the whole thing about you thinking about ability, opportunity, and intent, or means, opportunity, and intent, those those are also the things that you're going to have to answer for if you kill somebody in self-defense. Those are the things that are going to come up in court. You're going to have to show, did this person have the means to hurt me? Did they have the ability to hurt me? And did they have the intent to do it? You may have to answer these questions. I've had many police officers, that I work with, tell me that the AOI pyramid, coupled with these questions, is actually something good that police officers should study themselves when writing police reports. Because if they can answer all of that, it's going to be a good police report. But you may have to answer that in court as well. So, you want to pay attention to it. I want to talk a little bit about preclusion before we conclude today. Um, so I'll just, kind of read from my notes here, and hopefully I won't lose my place and read from the wrong thing when I get interrupted like I did earlier. But it says, so what is preclusion? In this context, it's a legal term. It means that even if you are the one being attacked, you have to legally prove and had no other safe alternative than physical force. You see this a lot when, well, of course, I mentioned, when you have to shoot somebody. Um, that has actually gotten more complex with the advent of stand your ground laws. When that's kind of hit the public. That and a thing that was a little bit predated the stand your ground law, but it's similar, called the Castle Doctrine. That that can get you in trouble. First of all, not all states have it here in the U.S., and even the ones that do, the rules for it can vary from state to state. when you're looking at assessing a threat, don't think about stand your ground or castle doctrine. Think about the other stuff, because if you're doing something to just validate you doing what you want to do, it could get you in more trouble. Um, I'll give you an example of what some of that law is in Texas. But basically, what the goal of stand your ground or castle doctrines are is to put the pressure on the attacker and not the victim. The attacker would have to prove that they weren't a threat, as opposed to the victim having to prove something. So in that way, it's good. But once again, if you put all your eggs in that basket, it can get you in a lot of trouble. But an example that I gave in the blog earlier in the written version was some rules for it. Um, Basically, what it's about is a homeowner and their home doesn't have to retreat and can use deadly force against an armed intruder. A business owner can do the same in their place of business, and this would also apply to a truck driver or somebody that's being carjacked, and that's the castle doctrine. But for you to be able to do that, you must first believe that deadly use of force was immediately necessary. You have the legal right to be on the property. You did not provoke the person against whom deadly force was used. And if you started it, then yes, you do have the duty to retreat. The law doesn't cover you. At the same time, also, you can't be engaged in criminal activity at the time that the force was used. So that's the castle doctrine. But if you put all of that into it when you're assessing a threat, once again, a lot of times you're just going to use that to validate doing something that's going to get you in legal jeopardy. So I wouldn't think about those things during my original threat assessment. I would just use this stuff, to be more aware and, try to get away, if you can. And that's going to look a lot better for you in court. So, that concludes this short training. I hope that you all learned something and got some basic skills that'll help you out. I encourage you to sit down with your families, around the kitchen and talk about the normal places that you go, and and ask those questions so that when you are in certain areas in certain spaces that you can be more aware. Um, I would also like to encourage the people listening to, if they have other self defense questions, to put them in the replies to this video, because the number of these videos that I intend to do, and not all of them is going to be using this software. This was just something because I had diagrams and I wanted to show them. I tried to adjust the volume the best that I could, but hopefully it's not too loud. But anyways, I encourage you to ask questions, and if there's certain things that you want to see talked about, then post it in the replies in the comment section and let me know. And if I can, I'll do a video on it and I'll answer your questions. The next video that's up was actually something that was mentioned in the comments of my introduction video when I was posting my very first video on DTube and introducing myself. It was posted about Photo Circle, about your mindset during a threatening situation. And I'm going to post that real soon because it actually kind of ties into this video as well, as far as what I think is the correct answer for that. But it should be a good video. And all of you, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening, and I hope that you gave something, or that you gained something. Excuse me, gained something from it. And I look forward to your questions in the comments, and doing videos on those. The number of videos that I do really is going to depend on you. It's what subjects do you want to see, and if I'm able to answer those questions and give you a satisfactory answer. So keep in touch with me, and let's build something great. And get a lot of education out there. Feel free to re-steam this anywhere, or you know all that good stuff. And I hope to see you soon. And have a great day.